Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's video where I'm talking about legacy content. And today on the preview video that you get to watch is Too Human. You can't buy this game anymore, but you can still download it. It's free on the Xbox store. Completely backwards compatible. Despite the studio being sued to oblivion by Epic Games many moons ago. But that's another story. So, what sparked this idea in my head was actually twofold. The story last week, or early this week, about
Time to go to work, wolves.
Sony PlayStation games on the Vita and the PS3 saying they're expiring or having an expiry date of some description, and people not being able to play the games because of it. That's been weird. I did go and check all the PlayStation 1 games I have downloaded on my Vita, and all of them still work, so yay. I think a lot of the problem games were Square Enix games or something. I don't have a lot of legacy PlayStation 1 games. It's totally possible that those games are going to get pulled from sale soon, whenever they close the PlayStation 3 store. But I want to say that it's kind of unfortunate, because when you start pulling all this content from sale, okay, and when the PlayStation 3 and Vita store, well, the Vita store closes for good and you can't buy games on it anymore, which will happen eventually because the Vita didn't sell super well apparently, but it's gonna be one of those things where there's gonna be a bunch of games that aren't available for sale anymore, and the only way you're gonna be able to play them besides purchasing a copy is emulating them. Because I highly doubt that Sony's Spartacus, or whatever they're calling the new PlayStation Plus, is going to be backwards compatible with is gonna let you buy these games. I feel like a lot of them are either gonna be streamed or run some sort of weird emulator, but that's fine, you know, like whatever. I understand that legacy games can't run forever, and I understand that wanting it is a little bit crazy, but what I also understand is that legacy games and older games don't have to just die, and a lot of them still have fandoms, and people are discovering these games for the first time. I actually watched a new Pro Jared show. It's like Now in the 90s, and he was talking about a game that came out like 92 for the NES, and that he'd never heard of and never played. He's like, it actually looked pretty cool, and I'm like, it's not super impressive, mind you, but it's very interesting to see a game like that someone on a platform like the NES, where he seems to have a sizable collection for games of that year, that generation, and to not know about a game existing, it must be very interesting. And I honestly very much find it incredibly interesting to see games that I've never seen or heard from before. Yeah, people will talk about the interesting games, but I remember picking up a game like Choniki, which is super weird and some sort of exaggerated man Japanese game.
There, on that statue.
It's
They are shadows.
it's bizarre. I don't know if I recommend playing it. It's a fun joke game where you get people to play it. It's some sort of it's a shmup type game with a lot of JPEGs and things. It's a very Japanese style game. To the point where it's kind of crazy. Honestly, it's worth the $5 I spent on it for the laughs that I had for about an hour or so. The same with the Misadventures of Trombone, a game that I was super interested in, but didn't want to spend $140 to get a copy at the time. $5 digitally was much more reasonable. And actually, that happened to me recently too. I was looking for a copy of Gravity Rush, and the PlayStation 4 copy goes for something as insane as $90. And I was very confused. I found a couple Japanese copies for a little bit less, but it was insane to me to think about a game that was not that old. I think it's 2016, 2017. That's when the second game came out. So somewhere in there, the PlayStation 4 version came out. Maybe a little earlier than that. But I did get a European copy of Gravity Rush 2. Does it have the Japanese version? No, it is Gravity Rush 2. It is not Gravity Rush. It's unfortunate, but one day, I know it's crazy to think about now, but one day the PlayStation 4 games won't be available. Or maybe they won't be. It's hard to say. See, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, in that regard, has at least been somewhat forward-looking, in that the console that came immediately after them could play all the games. Better, if not the same, if not better, I think that's what I'm trying to say here. And there was also the mid-console refresh, which is not unheard of with consoles. But having a completely different, like having a cheaper to manufacture version of a console is one thing, but having a more powerful version of a console come out is something we haven't really seen. The PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One X are one of the first times we've seen actually more powerful, more competent consoles. With the Xbox 360 Elite and the S, there was better cooling. But I guess the original Xbox did have that, because near the end they had more RAM in them, like 128 megabytes. But that wasn't like on the box. You couldn't see that on the box. It's very interesting what the current gen has done with both the consoles now on the next gen, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, having two SKUs. With the PlayStation SKUs having next to no differences, but the Xbox SKUs having major differences. I feel like it's just a matter of time before someone cracks the code on how to make a good how to make games run on the Series S with minimal effort. It's just the optimization on the memory structure. I know last gen was very interesting with its memory layout. Also, coming out just before DDR4 was a thing. So Sony went with the faster GDDR. And the Xbox One using DDR3, which is slower. but I've kind of gotten off topic. With these console games forward-looking and being like, these games will be able to run on the next platform, and they're going to try and keep that legacy going, I wonder where the past is. I wonder what happened with a lot of games. Because there's a ton of PC games that, despite being beloved, never really got a chance to shine, or were just shuffled away and never released again. There are plenty of PC games that came out before Steam existed, and it's funny to think that there are some people that don't know about a time before Steam. But Steam wasn't always there, and you'd buy boxed copies of PC games in store. Steam really did kind of just take over the market.
Ironic that it represents our world as
Sweep
it
the
once
rug out
was.
from under Microsoft.
Every day I am reminded of what we
But
are
that was
fighting to
kind of their own
restore.
fault.
Every
They could have
day
made their
I
own
am
distribution
reminded we
platform that
fight for the
digitally and all
benefit
that.
of
And I think they did
mankind.
try with games for Windows Live and things like that. But
Welcome home. How are you feeling, brother?
I would feel better if we had caught the beast.
it is
Any
what it
trace
is.
on the arm?
It is definitely a
And I don't want
machine
people to
of
act
origin,
like,
but of a
well,
design
Steam's
and
digital
composition that is
platform.
totally new.
No games have been,
You
don't
said it consumed
ever
one of the bar's
say that games haven't
Yes.
been delisted
It
from
bit a man's
Steam, or
head off and appeared
games
to
haven't
drip
been
blood from his
preserved
neck.
for Steam, because
Why would a
there's
machine
plenty
do
that have not.
For nourishment, perhaps?
And a lot of them it's for
Maybe it's part
DRM
organic with
reasons,
synthetic components.
or
Without
it's a
the whole
service
specimen,
game, and the
anything
game
but a
is
guess.
I will take an expeditionary
needs a
force to secure
license to
one.
There
run,
will
and
be no expedition, Balder. Our
I-
attention needs to be elsewhere.
honestly,
Hell has dissolved the pact.
ideally, going forward, no game will be left behind. PlayStation 4 games should run on the PlayStation 6 or whatever, and whatever Microsoft wants to call the next series of Xboxes. But I'm not bad per se. I just want legacy to be preserved. I don't think internet speeds are good enough yet that digital only distribution is viable for everyone, and I don't want to see physical games go away anytime soon, because that would be a huge shift.
Let them come to us. Take your time. We have the advantage.
But
Make those shots
I feel like it's inevitable. And I feel like Microsoft's half step with being able to preload stuff is nice. But I just want to live in a future where I can play my game with my niece when they get older, or where people can play the games that I own that are on my shelf. They can pick up the controller and plug it in and play it. I'm worried about the legacy of so many games just dying an unfortunate death. Not because the games are bad, but because no one wants to support them. We're trying so hard to keep them from being stolen today. I feel like at a certain point, we should just let people download the game. If you don't want to sell it, just put it up there. Yeah, some people who bought it before might feel gypped from it, but to be honest, projects aren't going to be supported forever, so. Anyone that's listening to this discussion video, I swear the podcast is coming. Hopefully this week I can nail down something. We're gonna have a bunch to talk about, and maybe I won't have to do one of these videos next week. I can either replace it with a podcast, or do something else. But until then, what did they?